Talking Economics, Emerging Scholars. Welcome to the podcast by the Center for Economic Research and Graduate Education, Economics Institute. Welcome to the first episode of Talking Economics, Emerging Scholars, where we shine a spotlight on CERGE-EI fresh PhD graduates. Today we are excited to have Ella Sargsyan join us. Ella is an empirical economist whose research focuses on development economics, specifically examining the impact of various shocks on households in developing countries and their social, economic, and political outcomes. She has recently defended her dissertation entitled Essays on Development Economics. During her PhD studies, Ella has enriched her academic journey with research visits to MIT Sloan School of Management and the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. Starting next academic year, she is joining UCLouvain as a postdoctoral researcher. Welcome, Ella.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be the first guest.
We are really happy to have you. So, you have recently defended your thesis, congratulations, and you are off to UCLouvain. But let us start at the beginning. Why did you choose to pursue a PhD in economics in the first place?
Well, I've always dreamed of becoming an economist. No, that's not true. I'm joking. So in fact, when I was choosing a profession, I didn't even really know what economists did. You see, I grew up in Armenia, and back then the career options were, let's put it, somewhat limited. And economics was more a choice of opportunity than a grand plan. Mm-hmm. So as a child, I had a deep love for math. My father had this book with difficult mathematical and logical problems, and we would spend hours solving them together. It was our bonding time, and I loved the challenge and satisfaction of cracking a tough problem. So when I got to the university and started taking classes that mixed economics with mathematics, it felt like a whole new world of challenges.
So just to interrupt, sorry, you started already the bachelor's level, bachelor in economics.
Yes, bachelor in economics. And I found this challenge exhilarating. And after I completed my master's degree in Armenia, I entered the workforce. But I quickly realized that something was missing. Let's say that it was not setting my soul on fire. And the routine of job didn't satisfy me, so I wanted something more, something that would push me further. And that's what eventually led me down the PhD path.
Mm-hmm. How did you find CERGE-EI and this place?
Yeah, so after that, after the experience with the workforce, I started my master's degree at ISET, and ISET always had close ties with CERGE-EI, and there I met some of the CERGE-EI current PhD students and graduates who were teaching me, such as Eva Hromadkova or Wojtek Bartosz. And I also met Randy Feiler, who was on the board at ISET, and he told a lot about CERGE-EI. So that's how I learned about CERGE-EI, and that's how I decided to go there. And I was also excited by the course of development economics that Wojtek Bartosz was teaching us back at ISET.
Mm-hmm. And so you came to CERGE-EI. How did you enjoy the studies? And were there any major challenges that you faced?
Yeah, well, I can't lie. The first 2 years of coursework were incredibly challenging, even considering that I came for the challenges, considering the fact that I came for the challenges, and I thought that I'm prepared for this tough academic life. My background helped me with some courses, but with others, I felt like I was working non-stop, often sacrificing all my leisure time. But what really made the difference was my cohort. I think we were lucky. We had an amazingly friendly and supportive group of peers. We worked in study groups. We shared the resources. We cheered each other. And that was crucial, I think. It was like we were all in this intense journey together, and we helped each other survive the toughest times. If I compare to my previous studies in Armenia or at ISET, everything was on a whole new and advanced level. While I was in the process, I was going through the courses, through the exams. I didn't really have time to notice how much I was growing and learning. But after each semester or after each year, and especially after a good grade, I would reflect back and looking back and seeing how much I'd accomplished or how far I'd come was incredibly satisfying. And it made all those late nights and challenging moments worth it.
You spent nearly a year in the US, first at Columbia University and then at MIT. How did that impact your studies?
Well, an important takeaway from my time in the US was the realization that I wasn't behind at all. The preparation I received at CERGE-EI was on parallel with what students at top institutions like Columbia and MIT were getting. And this realization was incredibly encouraging for me. Of course, meeting and interacting with some of the top economists in my field was the most invaluable experience, and getting their feedback on my research as well as observing their academic culture was an eye-opening experience. While I wouldn't say that was a game changer in my academic path, it certainly solidified my conviction to pursue a career in academia. But one more experience that I am particularly proud of, and it isn't directly related to my studies, but it's a small achievement for me, and I want to share this experience with you. So during my visit to MIT, I had an opportunity to meet with Professor Daron Acemoglu, and I came prepared with his book and asked him to sign it for the students of the Economics University in Gyumri. And not only he signed it, he also generously donated 5 more books to the university, which just recently opened their library. Mm-hmm. And when I got back to Armenia, I presented these books to the students in Gyumri and even broadcasted a personal message from Professor Acemoglu to them. And this experience was priceless and truly rewarding. So I consider my past and my PhD is a way of getting back to my country, to my hometown. And another way I give back is through teaching. I started teaching statistics and econometrics at the Economics University in Gyumri, where there was a significant shortage of teachers for these subjects. And I also introduced them to the CERGE-EI Foundation's distance learning program that broadcasts economics courses from Prague to different countries, specifically targeting central countries in Central Asia. And this initiative has led to many improvements in the education system in the university in Gyumri. And of course, sharing knowledge and seeing the direct impact on the students and the university has been an incredibly fulfilling experience for me. And it always reminds me why I chose this path, and it keeps me motivated every day.
That's amazing. Thank you. And so did you know from the start that you wanted to be in the development economics? You wanted to specialize in development economics, or did this come to you during the studies?
I knew from the start. As I said, I was a lot motivated by this course that Wojtek Bartosz was teaching at ISET, which was development economics. We looked through certain papers which were addressing issues related to developing countries, and I always felt that I'm part of it because of my background, because I'm coming from Armenia. And from the very beginning, I always saw that all the research questions that I would be later on working will be related to Armenia in some sense.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can talk now about your research. If you can tell us more about the projects that you have worked on during the studies.
Sure, I'm always excited to talk about my research. I can start with my job market paper, since all fresh graduates, I guess, are talking about their job market papers. So my job market paper is about the coping strategies that households use in times of economic shocks. And specifically, I'm concentrating on the transition period after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The income shock that accompanied the transition period following the collapse of the Soviet Union was unprecedented in its magnitude, and it affected 15 countries and more than 250 million households simultaneously. So, and an unexplored and the big question is what coping strategies households used and were those strategies effective. So you might wonder why this is important now, given that we are concentrating on the shock that happened many years ago. Well, given the recent events such as climate change, COVID-19 pandemic, or the war in Ukraine, this all accentuated concerns about food insecurity, especially in developing countries. And as we know, proper nutrition intake in early life is crucial for the development of adult health as well as cognitive performance, which are essential for human capital development. So, and malnutrition is associated with various adverse economic and health outcomes in adulthood. So, this makes it important to understand what coping strategies household can use to prevent these long-lasting effects of income shocks and associated nutritional deficit on children's health. What we specifically do, we examine the effect of agricultural home production of potatoes used as a coping strategy by households after the transition period that happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And
if I can interrupt,
sure.
This sounds like you have an interesting topic, but I wonder what sort of data, how did you find the data for this? Because you needed information about the health status of the kids, right? At different stages of their life. You needed information about what did the households do? So a lot of very specific data. So can you...
Yes. So for the paper, we are using combination of different data, but the main source which allows us to check this evolution of children's health or the home production of different crops is coming from Russia, and this data is called the Russian Longitudinal Monitoring Survey, which they started to collect starting from 1994, and this is a very detailed panel data where there is all the information starting from children's health. And in fact, as a measure of health, we are using the height of the children, and also information, it contains information about the household activities, such as what types of crops they were growing each year, and many other variables which describe the household. But of course, we combine this data with that was going to be my next sentence, with the soil suitability of the land for potato cultivation, because not all inhabitants of different regions of post-Soviet countries were able to take advantage of growing potatoes. It is highly dependent on the soil suitability for potato cultivation. So that's the variation that we are using in our study, and in our study to find our results.
Mm-hmm. The data fascinate me. These data are available for all the post-Soviet countries. So for the 15 countries that occurred after the dissolving of the Soviet Union, or
no? So that's the thing. That's why I said that we're using mix of different data. This panel data and very detailed structured data is available only for Russia. But we also use data from Kazakhstan. This is not a panel data, this is cross-sectional data, which was collected in 1996. And it also includes all this information about children's health, children's height, home production, but unfortunately it's not a panel structure, so they don't track children over time. For other post-Soviet countries, we are using another data set, which was those are interviews that were conducted by the World Bank and the EBRD, and in there, unfortunately, there is no information regarding home production of potatoes. It's mostly about the height of children that we are using, and we are using the fact that those adults later on were affected by the shock as children.
Mm-hmm. And so what are the results?
Yeah, so as I said, we're using this household and individual data from Russia, Kazakhstan, and nearly all post-Soviet countries, and they're using the special variation in soil suitability for potato cultivation. We show that children from households that grew potatoes during the transition period on more suitable lands were less affected by the transition period. For example, if we move a household from non-suitable lands to lands with median suitability level, the height of children from these households would increase by 2.5 centimeters.
That's quite a significant difference, yeah?
Yes. Interesting.
Interesting.
So I can continue talking about my other projects.
Yes, your big motivation, or it sounds like a major motivation, was the situation in Armenia. So, and I know that your research is also focusing on Armenia. So can you maybe tell us more about that?
Yes. But before going there, I just want to mention another research which was also motivated by Armenia. That's about the effects of armed conflicts on child gender preferences by parents. And this is my first research that I started at CERGE-EI, and something that was motivating me a lot. And that's actually the origin of the idea comes from Armenia, because Armenia is a country which, after gaining independence, has had very skewed male to female ratios, which means that people prefer to have more boys than girls, and they are using different types of methods to basically achieve this desired composition. But in this, I started this research because of the non-availability of the data. I started doing this research for Nigeria, which is yet another country which is characterized by strong son preference, and a country which has been exposed to various types of conflicts over the last several decades. So in here, I'm using demographic and health surveys, which was conducted in Nigeria for 5 rounds, and they also have detailed information regarding households, but especially they have detailed information regarding women and their children. So I combine this with the conflict data from Uppsala Conflict Data Program, which also includes information about geocoded events. So basically I can track the conflicts even to the exact location where it happened. And as a result, I established that violent conflicts have differential effect on the stated preferences for boys, depending on the type of the conflict and on the occurrence of civilian deaths. I further look into how these changed preferences translate into behavior, and I find 2 mechanisms through which it translates. The first is the stopping rules. Basically, parents are using stopping rules to achieve the desired gender composition.
Can you maybe explain the stopping rule?
Sure. So basically, if you want to have, let's say, 1 boy, then you will continue having children until you get this 1 boy. Similarly, if you want 2 boys, then you will continue having children until you get the 2 boys. So this has different implications than, for example, sex-selective abortions, where parents might abort the child based on the gender. In this case, we will see clear skewed ratios at birth. We would see more males being born than girls. But with stopping rules, this is the opposite. You will see that households have more children, and sometimes even more girls than boys. But the problem here is that they would be discriminated differently. So this could already be affecting their health, their education, so on and so forth. I mean,
so how they are treated after birth.
After the birth, yes. So that's, as I said, this research was motivated by Armenia, because this is something that I was always saying in Armenia, that parents are preferring to have more boys than girls, and I will always wanted to understand what are the origins of this and what can we do to prevent this in the future. And that's how the idea to connect it to the conflict came to me, because Armenia was always subject to conflict or ongoing conflict or frozen conflict for many years.
So if you should compare the conflict in Nigeria to the situation in Armenia, are you able to draw some parallels? Because you said that the results depend on the type of conflict, right? So the preference for boys, the people prefer more boys in case of which type of conflict?
Yeah, so in this Uppsala conflict data, they have differentiation into 3 types. The first 2 types are state-based conflicts and non-state conflicts, which means that state-based conflict is when one side of the conflict is necessarily the state, and non-state is that 2 armed groups are fighting each other. And then there is the third type, which is violence against civilians, or in other words, one-sided conflict. And in my research, I show that the first 2 types, state-based conflict and non-state-based conflict, they are increasing the preference for boys, while the third type, violence against civilians, is decreasing the preference for boys. And this is mostly the only difference between these types of conflicts is the number of civilian deaths which occurs as a result of this conflict. So violence against civilians is directly targeted against civilians, and there are higher proportions of civilians dying as a result of this conflict. And in these situations, I find that this type of conflict it does not increase the preference for boys.
Mm-hmm. Are you able to explain that?
Yeah, so as I said, I am working on pinpointing the mechanisms, but my explanation is that given that the violence against civilians is showing negative effect on preference for boys, I think that this is because people can directly see the effect on their children, and because they are the target, they are dying during the conflict, and this is forcing them not to want to have more boys who will be the victims of the conflict. But I still need, as I said, to investigate further to understand the mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. And to get the data, right? I'm repeating myself, but it seems incredible. What are you able to get from this information, especially in the developing countries? I would assume that it's actually more difficult to find the information. Exactly
the main problem, the data, and that's why I think that for some of the questions, there should be some experiments which would allow to collect the data that are needed to understand what are the exact mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. There is more work. Another topic that I'm going back to is Armenia, and I know that you do actually research also on the Armenian topic and the impact of the war that is in Armenia. So can you say something about that?
Yes, of course. So before going to the war, I have also a project which in some sense relates to the project of conflict and preferences. So in Armenia, in my actually home city, Gyumri, there was an earthquake in 1988, which destroyed almost all the city and took lives of many people. And as a continuation of this research, I'm looking at how these types of disasters affect the child gender preferences. And I'm again using these demographic and health surveys. And in this case, I'm using the timing of the interviews. So basically, December 7 is the day when the earthquake happened. And this day is every year. At this day we commemorate the victims of the earthquake. So there are some special episodes aired on TV. People are going to designated places to lay flowers. There are some ceremonies, but at the same time, this day is a working day. People are not on.
Holidays, public holidays.
Mm-hmm. Not on public holiday. And therefore it allows for the demographic and health surveys to have interviews on this day. So I'm comparing people interviewed on December 7 or around December 7 with people interviewed on all other days. And what I find is that people who are interviewed on December 7, they express higher preference for males than for females. Of course, in order to claim more long-run effect, meaning that what effect the earthquake had, I need to obtain data on the people who were directly affected by the earthquake, and this is my future plan. But for now, these results are really important because, as I mentioned, after gaining independence, which was in 1991, Armenia continued having high preference for males, and specifically we see that there are more males born than females. And one of the reasons could have potentially been the earthquake, which pushed women or parents to have more preference towards males.
That is interesting, and yet the earthquake is a disaster which is targeting civilians, right? So in a way, it's contradicting your results from Nigeria, is it not?
That's true, but the mechanism here, in case of the earthquake, is in my understanding, is that after the earthquake, people had to rebuild their houses, and also usually while in these societies households have a preference for males, is that because they believe they are better able to provide the family. So after the earthquake, they had to rebuild everything, and they were also thinking about how they will living in the future. So that's why the male preference might have exacerbated.
The investment is better.
Yes. And another project that we recently started working on with my co-author, which is also about Armenia, and I am excited to start this project, is about the civic engagement of people after wars. So as we know, active democratic engagement plays a crucial role in the reconstruction and advancement of economies, especially after such shocks. So we are going to utilize unique individual level data from Armenia, and this is data on the voter lists. We have post and pre-conflict parliamentary election lists, and administrative data on the casualties of the Armenian-Azerbaijani war of 2020. So the idea would be to look at how having deaths in the household during the war affected the voting behavior of household members. And we would be also able to provide further insights into the heterogeneity of the effect based on the different voter and victim characteristics. This study is still in process of data digitization, because these voting lists, those are available only in PDF paper formats, and it takes a lot of time to digitize all this data. But we are hopeful that this is going to be a really interesting and important study for Armenia, at least.
That sounds exciting. So you have a lot of projects that you're still working on, and a lot of ideas. Now you're off to UCLouvain for a postdoc research position. So what are the plans for this day? Are you able to continue with your projects, or are you asked to join a project of their own?
So as for anyone in academia, I think a postdoc is this golden opportunity to refine and publish your research on your way to an assistant professor position, and of course also forge new collaborations. At UCLouvain, I plan to do exactly that. I will be joining a project that aims to enhance our understanding of conflict hotspots and migration corridors over time in low and middle income countries. And this area of study fascinates me because it aligns perfectly well with my interests. But at the same time, I will continue working on my own research projects, such as the project on civic engagement after war, which I just described, and also on my paper regarding the war and gender preferences, where I need to find the exact mechanisms. So they are very supportive, and they are looking forward for me to continue working on my own research projects.
That's amazing, and I hope that we will stay in touch as well through CERGE-EI.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Thank you for being here.